Thank you. Yeah, my name is Anders. I'll be talking about testing Angular applications with Jest today. And I just want to give a quick notice that when I'm using my phone, I'm not tweeting, I'm not going at a presentation, hashtag so many geeks. Nope. This is my remote for the presentation. So now you know. Okay, I have a small disclaimer or notice. Everything I'm going to present today, all the live coding, all the code, all the configuration stuff, I blogged about it on my blog. I resuscitated it. It hasn't been touched in 5 years. So now it's there for you. There's also a GitHub repo with the application we're going to convert from the Angular CLA generated environment to a more specialized environment running Jest. Okay, so even though there are slides, there are not many of them. There are 12, it says. And I'll mainly be doing live coding, well, live configuration, and then some coding. So don't worry, don't fatigue over too many slides. So who am I? I'm the guy on the right. That's my dog on the left, by the way. My name is Skarby. I'm a freelancer, and I've been doing Angular development ever since it was called AngularJS back in 2013 or something. It was before it was version 1.0. So I've been doing this for a while. When I don't do Angular, I do Java, and please don't shame me. I feel ashamed enough. Yeah, okay. So I know Dave asked this question, like, how many of you are unit testing your code? Like, show of hands, raise your hands. Almost all of you. Like, the ones that haven't raised your hands, you should really look into it. I just wanted to see this because this brings me to the next question. How many of you does end-to-end tests for your code? Show of hands. I don't. Not too many of you. I kind of get that they're a bit more cumbersome, but they're equally important. You can talk about end-to-end tests being black box testing so that you basically know, does my stuff work or doesn't it work? Whereas the unit tests are going to go in and say, I know your stuff isn't working, and this is exactly where you're going wrong, if you wrote them. Okay, so a show of hands. How many of you unit test all of your code? I'm the only one who, no, there's one guy over there. You're awesome. You suck. No, you don't. No, you don't. It's difficult to unit test code, and there are certain aspects of Angular that's difficult to test. And there's also, like, it's expensive to test all your code. When I write code, I have I can talk about having one part of my time goes for feature development, writing code that actually adds a button that does things when you click on it. And then I have 2 to 3 times that amount of time that goes for writing code. And some people just don't want to pay for it. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. So you can't always get what you want. But there are also some practical things that keeps you from doing complete unit testing of your code. And well, some of it is basically the time it takes to execute it. Like, running a test doesn't take long. If you have a unit test, they execute in a matter of milliseconds. If you have a bit more unit test, it's a matter of seconds. If you have thousands and thousands of unit tests and you test everything, it starts to add up. I have a remedy for that. Well, I don't. Facebook have a remedy for that. Or they think they do. But we can use it with Angular, so don't be afraid. Okay, so this is an example. What's better? This is the test suite for the application I've written, where I add in a mistake. And then you get this when you execute it with Jasmine and Karma, you get this error. Now, this is actually not too bad. It says, like, it expected something to be true, but it was false. And, well, to be quite honest, when I look at that, I'm not quite sure what goes wrong. Yeah, it goes wrong here in a test, and then there's some zone stuff. And it's like, you can get dizzy if you have a lot of code that fails. You can get lost in these stack traces. So what's better, this or this? This is the exact same test fail, but it's run with Jest. So now I'm able to see we expected to get false, but we got true. And here's actually the code. It's in this file. And here's the mistake. So it shows a couple of lines. It even shows the line numbers here. So that's a bit easier to read in my eyes, at least. So what's better? This, which is, again, Jasmine and Karma, what you get from the CLI. You get some execution, and I have some errors, I guess. And it uses 174% of my CPU, which I guess translates to a little bit more than 1.5 core. Or you could do it with Jasmine, with Jest. And if you do that, you see that it now utilizes almost 5 times more processing power. So then you think, is that a better thing? Like, won't it drain my battery? Yes, it will. So please plug in your machine when you do this. This is actually one of the reasons I really like Jest. It better utilizes your machine. So what does Jest provide you that Jasmine and Karma doesn't? Well, it provides you with a completely different way of executing tests. So when you run Karma, it runs against a real browser. It can be Firefox, Chrome, or Chrome in a headless version, or something else. But they can only run in sequence, at least to my knowledge. I may be wrong. But they're also involved in running a real browser. So you need to basically fire up the DOM and manipulate it, and it takes time. So Jest has a way around that. It won't run anything in a browser. So you might think, well, my applications run in a browser. I really want my tests to run in the same browser. But for unit tests, it's really not that important. For end-to-end tests, absolutely, run them in the right browser. But Jasmine, you can run them in a virtualized DOM. And Jest actually uses JS DOM, which is a DOM written purely in JavaScript. And when you have that, you can run it with several parallel processes. And when you do that, well, then you get a performance boost. So again, a lot more performance. Yeah, and then it has a lot of other things. Like so Jest is sort of like an all-in-one package where with the CLI you have Jasmines for your assertions and your mocking, and you have Karma for the test runner. Jest is basically assertions. It's mocks. It's a test runner. It has built-in code coverage. It has all these kind of things, which is actually pretty nice. So pretty simple to use as well. It also has certain ways of accessing your tests in a better way. You can say, I just want to write or run a test that contains this in the test name. You can do regular expressions on test files. You can say, I only want to run tests and related tests for the files that have been modified in your GitHub repo or in your working copy of your GitHub repo. So it has a lot of really cool stuff. So I think we should see about actually configuring it, and I'll show you how awesome it is. So what I'll be doing is I will remove Jasmine and Karma. I'm sorry, Angular CLI. I will install and configure Jest. Then I'll show you a couple of the examples of how to run the tests efficiently using some of the interactive tools it has, where you can select certain tests and run only modified files. And then I'll talk about something that Jest has that's called Snapshot Testing. And just a brief word on Snapshot Testing. Snapshot Testing is basically you take either a JavaScript object or you take a part of the DOM, you serialize it, and you write it to disk. And then you say, that's my snapshot. That's how I want the piece of behavior or object or DOM to look like. Then the next time you run the code, it will verify against that snapshot, which will mean that you can actually do really efficient, complex testing. But we'll get more into that when we get there. So I will now start to do some live coding and live configuration. And another disclaimer, if I look at this piece of paper, it's not paper, it's my analog version of Google. Like there are 13 there are 13 steps I need to go through to configure Jest. It's not really that simple to do. It's not difficult. But it's just a lot of steps. And even though I'm writing macros, I still have 4 pages to go through. So hold on to your hats and glasses. So basically, this is the application I have written for you. It's a small to-do list application. And it's no surprise. Everybody does a to-do list application today. It's basically the hello world of the web, right? So what you're able to do is you're going to write a task here like, I don't know, present at NG Aarhus. Wow, I know, amazing. And I can complete the task, and I can delete the task, and do certain stuff. I know, not impressive stuff. But there's a bit more to this application than meets the eye. So if I bring up my developer tools and use my mouse accordingly, I have a bit behind the scenes going on here. So let me try to do this again. I'm just going to add something here, a filler task. Now, if I reload the application, if it was all running like in an in-memory instance of this application, I wouldn't see this task anymore. But when I reload the browser, it's still there. And that's because I'm using local storage, first of all, local storage to save this data. I'm using NGRX as a store-based backend. I'm using NGRX entity for identifying these items. I'm using effects, and I basically over-engineered this. But first of all, there's nothing wrong with over-engineering stuff. Like, you get paid more. So over-engineer stuff, like, and be proud of it. The second thing is, when you over-engineer stuff, you sort of get the added benefits of, ooh, this tool didn't really handle that very well. So I added in a lot of complexity so we can meet the really ugly sides of Jest when you configure it. So I haven't over-engineered. I've over-engineered. Yeah. OK. So the application's running here, and there's nothing really special going on here. I can run my tests by running my test scripts in the package JSON. Thank you so much, Dave, for telling me about that. So if I run the test, it's just going to build it, start the browser, run the tests using comma and Jasmine assertions, and give me that. OK, cool. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of that. So I'm going to go into, and this is my IDE, by the way. I'm not expecting you to be able to read this, but I basically need this to be able to bring my macros alive. So if I go, this is a command for everything I need to get rid of. So I'm going to paste it in here. Here we go. So like, that's a lot of packages you have to get rid of. You have Jasmine. You have Jasmine. I have no clue what that is. You have Jasmine Core, Spec Reporter, Karma Chrome Launcher, Coverage Istanbul Reporter, Karma Jasmine H2. It keeps going. Like, let's get rid of that. OK. So it's going to work. It's going to take its time. And it's basically going to remove the NPM packages and going to bring me a list of all the things I've done wrong, which is a couple of things, I guess. No, not that wrong. And then we need to remove a couple of Karma configuration files. So I'll go to my, my macro completer here, and I will, ooh, didn't like that. There we go. So if I go over here, I'm going to do that. I'm going to remove the 2 files called karma-conf.js and test.ts that are located in the source folder, because those won't be needed anymore. That didn't take long. OK, so let's have a look at some of the files we need to edit. And I am going to open, well, so first of all, this is basically the source code we have for the project. So you should sort of recognize what you're seeing. There's a source folder that holds your application with some of the configurations that's centric for the application or specific for the application. And then you have a general TypeScript configuration. You won't be touching that. That's all good. But if you go into source, you have a file called tsconfig spec.json, which basically means the way we abuse TypeScript to test in Jasmine and Karma. So we want to get rid of a couple of things in here. So we deleted the test TS, so we'll remove that from the files. And we'll remove Jasmine because we're not using that anymore. That's the first thing. So once we have that, we are now completely rid of Jasmine and Karma. There's no configuration files, and we're sort of happy. Well, we're not happy because now we can't run our tests. So we're going to try to add in Jest, and whoops. We're going to try to run Jest and or install Jest and a preset for Jest for doing this for us, because we don't want to do things manually. So I'm going to copy this command, bring it over to something you can see. So let me clear the window. We're going to try to install Jest, and then we're going to install a preset for Jest to be used with Angular and save it in our dependencies or development dependencies. So the first part is, of course, Jest, the tool. The second part is a predefined set of configurations for Jest that you need when you need to test an Angular application. Sort of telling Jest that there's something called zone.js. It doesn't know about that, but we can tell it using that. So we'll install these packages, and it will work, or start downloading it. It'll take a while. And then we basically need to go in. It'll do this in the background. It's fine. We trust you. So we'll go into our IDE again, and we'll open the, let me just see. No, we'll open our package.json file. So in here, well, first of all, we should have a way to execute our Jest test tool. So when I said that I removed everything that was related to Karma and Jasmine, I was sort of lying. These two scripts has to go away. And away they went. Bless you. The next thing is we want to add in specific commands for running Jest. And fortunately, Dave explained on my behalf that these are all scripts you can run by running npm run and then the script name. So I have a small macro I prepared. And then I have these three commands. So there's test, which means please run the test one time. There's test watch, which means run Jest in an interactive repeating or looping mode. And then I have test CI, which says please run Jest in a continuous integration environment. Say, for instance, you have a build server that has to produce your CI builds. And when you add CI, it's more or less related to snapshots. So you don't want your continuous integration to write snapshots when it discovers a test. It only has to validate it. So when you pass the CI flag, you say only validate snapshots. Don't even try to remotely create them. And then the last parameter is called run in band. And that disables the functionality of running in parallel, because when you run on a CI server, at least in most of the projects I work on, it's fairly limited running on Travis or Azure DevOps or, I don't know, limited environments. So it'll actually run faster if you limit it to one thread. And time is not that big of a requirement when you run it on a build server. So now we have the test scripts in place. The next thing is we need to configure Jest. And Jest can be configured in a lot of ways. They actually restricted themselves now, so you have to add it as a separate node to your package.json file. So I'll just add a separate node here. And I'll just add this. So this is a lot of configuration. But what I'm saying is, now I added a configuration node for Jest. I want to use the preset I installed so that it does all the automatic Zone.js configuration. I wanted to run a file ahead of running my tests that can basically be compared to the test TS file we removed. And then I have some transformations here. So Jest doesn't really play nice with the way that if you import like a JavaScript file, it doesn't really play nice with anything else that's ES5. So you have to be able to basically pre-process it. So what I'm saying is use the preprocessor from the preset to handle TypeScript and HTML. It will transpile that to JavaScript. And then all the JavaScript files use Babel so that it ends up in a state where it just understands it. We're almost done with the first page. I know, it's bad. OK, so now we have Babel just configured down there. But we also need a configuration file for Babel. I know, it's crazy. They told me that JavaScript was easy. They were lying bastards. OK, so now I created a file called babel.rc. And that's basically a configuration file for Babel. And I can go in here. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. Right. That was what I wanted to do. Now I need to go over to another file where I can access my macro. OK, good. So in the Babel.rc file, we basically said use the Babel preset, not the Jest preset, the Babel preset called env, which will basically handle modern JavaScript compilation to something that's older and more boring. So now that we have that in place, we have Babel. And almost the last step of a configuration. If we go back to our spec TypeScript configuration, we need to add in some types. And these types are kind of important because if we don't do this. We write this by hand. We wanted to know about the types called Jest, and we wanted to know about JS-DOM. Jest only speaks old JavaScript and only speaks old JavaScript modules, so we need to configure it with CommonJS. So we'll add the module tag and say, please use CommonJS. So now that's actually implemented. So if we're lucky, it should work. And if not, like if it works up here, you can always say it works on my machine. So we're going to do this. We're going to say npm run our test script, which kicks off Jest. Please work. Nope. That's good. That's because I missed a step. I actually missed creating that setup Jest file. I probably had that somewhere in here. Nope, didn't. Nope. OK, fair enough. But we can create that at least, so that's not too bad. So it has to reside in the source folder in the setup Jest TS file. So let me go to my IDE, which is hiding over here. You go into source folder. You create a file called setup Jest TS. The only thing that has to do is it needs to import Jest preset Angular. Yeah. No? Yes. Whew. I'm so relieved. OK, we're going to run it again. So look, it runs a lot of tests in parallel and then gives me a lot of failures. So first of all, I wouldn't expect it to fail like this, basically because I don't make mistakes. And there's clearly mistakes in here, right? So if you go to Jest's project page, it says it's a drop-in replacement for Jasmine. And they're lying. But then again, they're Facebook, so what would you expect, right? I don't trust Facebook with your code or your privacy or the lack of same. Okay, so now we have a lot of failures here. We basically have, well, cannot find a provider for this. Cannot find create spy object. Nope, not happy about that either. Well, it seems like it cannot find create spy object. So let's have a look at what that is. So we'll search for create spy object. Okay, here it is. Okay, so what do you know? I left in some Jasmine again. Well, that's not too bad because, well, it is actually too bad because in Jest, there's really no mechanism that's similar to create spy object. And if you don't know what that is, it's a function you can call. Here it is. So you basically say create a mock object that's called, well, local storage service in my case, and it provides two mock functions or methods called getArray and persist. And I use that all over the place. So since Jest doesn't know about that, I'm kind of sad. Now you can do stuff to mitigate that. I'll just do it somewhere here. So I can go like Jest function, then you give it like this strange syntax. You can already feel it's Facebook, right? So basically here you can say like getArray, and that's a mock function. And I mean, you're already crying at this point, and I'm still missing a method. You don't want that. So you're going to revert that. And fortunately, there are other people that have created an npm package that can solve that for us. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to stop the test run. I'm going to say npm install Jest create spy object, save to development. And it's going to run and fetch the package that has a library that's sort of similar to what we're already used to using. We can go to our editor again. And now instead of doing this, I can say I want to import. I want to hit the right buttons. I want to import create spy object from Jest. Oh, it was already helping me there. Okay. And now it's complaining about, it's not complaining about anything else right now. What did I hit? No? Should be happy.
You just cut the line, I think.
No. Undo, save. Whew. There it is. Okay. So now I'm going to try to run the tests again. Okay. So I got further. Like there are not that many failures left. There's a couple of failures left. So I can see that now I'm failing on return value. And apparently that's called in something that's undefined, so it doesn't know about and. That makes me sad. Doesn't know about throw error, again on and. So why is that? Well, it's because that Jest is just slightly different from Jasmine. Again, Facebook. So if you go, and we're just going to have a look at, I think it's actually in this file. If we look for .and, here we have it. Whoops. That's nice. What are you doing? No, I'm not disabled, thank you. Then instead of this, you basically just call mock return value. And there was another and. There was another and. Here's the other and. There's a throw error. And it would be really nice if I could just write mock throw error. But again, nope, doesn't work that way. So I can provide it a mock implementation. I can say whenever I call this method, I just want to throw new error with the error message. And a semicolon. Where did my terminal go? And matrix hash neo. Okay, going to run the test again. Yeah, okay. So see, now it gets angry with me because it says it can't read local storage. And I know my DOM, I know my browsers. There's a local storage on window. Like Facebook, you can tell me many things, but I know there's local storage on window. But they're actually right, because I was talking about that Jest was based on JS-DOM, and JS-DOM is a virtual implementation, and it does implement a virtual implementation of the DOM, but it doesn't implement the full browser API. So what you need to do is you basically need to provide it a polyfill or a mock for these things. So this is where I add that. And don't worry, you don't have to watch me type this out, because that's going to be a long day for you. And me, by the way. We're going to go over here. And in the source folder, we're going to create a file. And we're just going to call it Jest GlobalMarks TS. Okay. So in here, we want to basically add the global marks. I'm going to also complete this, and then you're going to be so happy that I didn't have to write this out by hand. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. There you go. Okay. So everybody knows that by heart, right? No, they don't. Okay. So there are certain things that we can see up here. First of all, we can see that I don't know what I did here. Oh, God. Get rid of this. Nothing to see here. I think I copied too much. Okay, better, good. Okay, so this here is, yeah, I thought it was too much. Okay, it's not that bad. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm creating a mock object which is going to represent the window object. It's going to have, no, it's actually the storage mock. It's going to have a similar API to local storage and session storage. We're going to define those properties on the window that JS-DOM has. We're going to provide it with the standard doc type that, that you should all be using. We're going to provide it with some functions it doesn't have, so you can use the Angular Animations API, them being get computed style and the transform property on document body style. Don't remember this, it's on my blog. Look it up. Don't take notes. Okay, so once I have that, I just need to go into my spec configuration. No, I'm lying. I need to go into my setup Jest file, and I need to import the global Jest mux. So what I have here is now I say in the setup method for running my tests, I import the preset and I import my mux. So whenever I run a test, it has the preset objects loaded and it has the mux. So jumping to the terminal, running it again. Nope. Okay, I did something wrong. Sometimes you do stuff that's wrong, and that's okay when you know magic. You can just jump to like this. And you can say, I really want to jump to this point in time. And then you can say npm run test.
Actually, you can leave out the run if you run test.
Yeah, that's actually right. You can just write npm test. Three keystrokes you can save there. So four, that's a space. Yeah, okay. You're right. You're right. It makes a difference. It's almost 25% reduction. So now you see we ran all our tests and it all completed. I had a typo somewhere. Again, 4 pages, so not too bad. Okay, so now we're able to run with Jest. We are able to run it in parallel. And it's very cool. So let me just do the thing where I say I want to run this in interactive mode. So I'm going to run test watch. So when I do that, it basically says, didn't find any tests related to file changes since last commit. Fair enough. I can blow stuff up. I'll go into the app, I don't know, the TS file here, and I can make a variable called Bob. Bob is a number. Bob is a number of 42. So this Bob is 42. When I save that, and I jump back over here, something happened. So it was actually faster running the test than I could switch over to it. So now it says I ran the item component spec TS because the item component utilizes the checkbox component. So of course, since we made the change in the checkbox component, we want to run this, the test for that, and in turn all the dependencies of that. You can also say, yeah, that's fine, but I really don't want to run anything else than my checkbox. So I can go into pattern match mode. So how many of you love regular expressions? Okay, hands down. How many of you hate regular expressions? Cool. Okay, Jest provides us with regular expressions to match our tests. So if we say match anything in the beginning, but it has to end with checkbox and then end with stuff, then it only runs that test. Now, again, I have 67 tests in total. It's not a big deal to run them all. But when you have thousands of tests, even running them in parallel, it's nice to limit this down. If not to save time, then to at least reduce the clutter of tests that are passing instead of going to the test that fails. Okay, cool. So, but wait, there's more. Isn't that what they say? In this interactive mode, I can also write A if I want to run all tests, and like it comes with all bells and whistles. You can configure it and whatnot. So let's have a look at some snapshot testing. So I will go to my IDE, and I will grab my my item list, and I will open the test file for my item list. So there's some tests in here, and I basically want to add in a test that captures the rendered state of my checkbox in a configured state. Create a snapshot from it so that the next time I run it, it's going to match against that snapshot. So say, for instance, you have some sort of UI widget, and you want to make certain that it looks a certain way, that it has certain classes, that it has certain sub-elements and whatnot. Well, you can verify that very easily instead of having to type out, does it have this element with that child element, and does it, it becomes very cumbersome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a small test here. Why does it say this? Go away. Okay, so I'm missing a D. Okay, here we go. So here's a snapshot test. So basically what I'm saying, I'm describing a test that does snapshot of the markup of the item component. And what I say is the test, it should match the markup for an item. So what I do is like way up there, if I scroll up, there's a before each that sets up my, my component. So I say just detect all the changes and then expect the fixture, basically what has a handle to the DOM, to match a snapshot. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to the window here. And it said one snapshot written from one test suite. And that's because that now we have a test. But there was no snapshot there. There was no data it has to verify against. So you basically need to write a snapshot. And we can have a look at that snapshot. It's not a big deal. So if we look here in our subfolder for item list, there's a folder called Snapshots. If we go into there, it has that file name, item list component spec TS snap. And this is a snapshot file. So it's basically just JavaScript. And it says exports and then the name of the test. And it's a fully qualified name, like all the nested describes with the it at the end. And then it has what the fixture produced. So when I run the test one more time, it's not going to write a file, it's just going to verify it. So I'm going to hit enter, force it to run again. And it passes. It doesn't say anything. It's just a normal test that actually passes. But, whoops, if I go into the HTML and I say that, I don't know, the new item editor div the div with the class new item editor has to have another class called Bob. Bob is all over the place today. And I save it. Well, then it fails. It basically says that one snapshot failed from one test suite. Do stuff. And then if we scroll a bit up here, we can actually see what was the snapshot and what we received. So in the snapshot, there was only new item editor, and it's in a nice context. But we received something with Bob. So now that it failed, we can go into interactive mode. Press I. So now it's going to pause on a snapshot. And we have some things here. We can say, I actually want there to be a Bob class on the div, so I can upgrade it, or I can just skip it, but I want to update it, so press U. Thank you, Siri. God. Okay. So now it actually updated the snapshot, and we can just run the test again, and it's going to pass. And if we look in the snapshot file, it now updated it here, so it's called Bob. So this is very powerful when you have to verify that markup hasn't changed. It's very powerful if you want to verify that, like, say you have a store-based setup, and if you don't, what's it called? If you basically don't have snapshot testing, you're going to spend a lot of time writing the setup, but you can just save the store state to a snapshot and verify against that. So you can basically do a sort of interactive test development just by manipulating the state of your tests. So yeah, that's what I have. Any questions? People are zoned out. Like, you kept me, it's more than 8 o'clock. I need to go to bed. No. Yeah?
So I'm just wondering, how does it verify like the integrity of the files, or does it do any checksums? Like, let's say you check this out on disk and something went wrong midway through the build and the file is corrupted, or like, does it know?
Just doesn't know. Again, Jest is sort of, it just does the comparison of what's on disk. So, but then again, you can basically just, if you have your code in Git, Git has cryptographic checksum validation. So if you have it in Git, you actually know that the test code you check out corresponds to what's in your repo remotely. So yeah, so that's the way around it. Yeah?
Would you check in the snapshots folder?
Yes, you would. And if you're in one of those larger corporations that does, or smaller corporations that does code reviews, snapshots should be part of your code reviews because that becomes part of your testing. So you have to make sure that when you verify against a snapshot, you should go and verify, is that what I expect it to be? Like if somebody wants to check in that change with Bob, you want to question him, why did you add that snapshot, that class? So yes, you have to check it in, and you have to have some sort of review process, because if you just go crazy and say update, update, update snapshot, the value goes away. So yes, you have to check it in, and you have to verify that you don't add bad snapshot data. Yep. Yes?
So my understanding, correct understanding that it is a way to check that the HTML files really haven't changed?
Yes, it is. So it's your responsibility when you produce a snapshot, then you know it's in a given state that's sound and reasonable, so that when you check against the snapshot, it stays in that state. Yes?
What kind of files, or what kind of data can you put in a snapshot?
Anything. Anything. Anything that can be serialized. So I'm not sure. Well, it seems like this is just JSON being written, actually. I mean, it goes into a JavaScript file. So anything that can go into a JavaScript file as a textual representation can be put into a snapshot. So it's your imagination that sets the limit. Yes?
Yeah, it was just regarding all the setup. Is that
schematic that does the whole setup you went through, like deleting Jasmine, Karma, and setting up all the Jest test setup.
There is one of those?
Just standard.
You know what? I should be sad. I should be sad. I should be really sad. But then again, I remember that I actually got paid to figure this out. So I don't feel sad. I feel pretty good. No. That's absolutely use the schematics if they're there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And it's, the macro tool you're using, what's that?
So I'm basically just using WebStorm, and it has live templates, and that sort of works. In certain cases, you have to specify which file you want it to trigger in, and it's sort of a mess. It'll get the job done. Yeah. Anything else? Other questions? Nope. Okay, well then I want to say thank you, and thank you for your time.